Hiya, 4th and 5th class. This week we're looking at the French Revolution. So I'm going to read the pages from this book. They're also going to be on the Padlet and there's some questions to go along with it. In the 1770s, the people in France took a great interest in the American Revolution, or the American War of Independence as it is better known. France sent large amounts of money as well as supplies and soldiers to help the American people in their war against Britain. The American War of Independence affected France in three ways. A. The success of the Americans against Britain and King George III encouraged the French people to rebel against their king, Louis XVI. They did not want a king to rule them any longer. Instead, they wanted the ordinary people of France to take control of the government. B. France was bankrupt because it had been given so much aid to the Americans during the American War of Independence. The King of France tried to raise money by asking people to pay a land tax. However, this idea was very unpopular. People became more and more annoyed with the king and his government. And C. The French people liked the idea of a Bill of Rights which the American people had got after their successful War of Independence with the English. They were tired of being ruled by a wealthy king. They longed for a democracy where the ordinary people would have a say in how the country was ruled. The King of France, Louis XVI, and his wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, as well as the nobles and the clergy, were wealthy and they lived in luxury. The nobles and clergy did not pay taxes, and they all had the best jobs. The poor people who worked hard and got paid very little money had to pay huge taxes to the nobles and clergy as well as to the king. The poor often did not have enough food to eat. Life for these people in France was difficult as well as unfair, and as a result they were very unhappy with their rulers. Marie Antoinette was from Austria, a country that, for many years, was considered to be an enemy of France. She was very unpopular in France. French people felt that she spent too much money on her clothes, her jewellery, and other expensive items. When one of her helpers told her that many of the people in France could not afford to buy bread, she's supposed to have answered, "If they have no bread, let them eat cake." The people were disgusted and angered by this remark. It proved to them that she knew little about how poor they were and how difficult it was to buy food. King Louis was more popular, but he was too weak as a leader to make decisions that would have helped the poor people. Let's turn the page. To make matters worse, the poor people of France were well aware of the enormous wealth of King Louis XVI and his queen. They lived in a magnificent building in Versailles, just outside Paris. This building had hundreds of beautifully decorated rooms. The king and his nobles spent their day hunting, shooting, fishing, gambling and feasting. This was a very different lifestyle to that of the ordinary people of France. People who complained about their poor living conditions or the shortage of food for their children were often put into jail. At that time, the most famous jail in France was the Bastille in Paris. In June 1789, middle-class people, doctors, teachers, businessmen, lawyers, etc., and poorer people met and formed a new group to help fight for change in the country. This group called itself the National Assembly. The king and the nobles did not like this assembly. They knew that the assembly would try to take away the control of their country and force them to share their wealth with poorer people. Rumours spread around Paris that the king was about to send his soldiers to close down the National Assembly. On the 14th of July, 1789, thousands of people poured onto the streets of Paris to try to stop the king and his nobles from closing down the National Assembly. The crowd raced towards the Bastille, which was a symbol of all that was bad in France at the time. Although it was a prison, large quantities of arms and ammunition were also stored there. The Bastille was attacked and captured, and the prisoners were released. The French Revolution had begun. It was now clear that the king had lost control and that the ordinary French people wanted to be governed by the National Assembly. A fact folder. The storming of the Bastille. The Bastille was a prison and a symbol of the king's power. Over the years, many people were imprisoned there without trial. In 1789, the prison was mainly used as a store for weapons. When it was attacked, there were only 7 prisoners inside, including an Irishman. The government of the Bastille refused to hand over the arms, and so he was killed. His head was placed on a pike. The fall of the Bastille marked the beginning of the Revolution. Today, the French celebrate that date as a national holiday. It is called Bastille Day, and it's the 14th of July. The National Assembly declared that everybody should be free and equal and live peacefully together. The motto of the new assembly was liberty, equality, fraternity. Fraternity means like brotherhood. Instead of being ruled by a king, the French people set up a republic. A republic means the people choose their leaders with the monarch playing no part in the government. The new flag of France was red, white and blue. White was the royal colour. Red and blue were the traditional colours of Paris. On the flag, white appeared between the red and the blue. This shows that the king was now under the control of the people of Paris. The National Assembly wrote a new constitution for France and passed a Declaration of the Rights of Man. This declaration was greatly influenced by the Bill of Rights, which the Americans had drawn up for their country just a few years earlier. So the French Declaration of the Rights of Man says, man is born equal and free. Many people have the rights to liberty, property and security. The law must be the same for all. People have the freedom to speak, write and print what they wish. King Louis XVI was not happy with any of these changes. He decided to seek help from other rulers in Europe. His brother-in-law, the Emperor of Austria, promised help. Rumours spread that the king was bringing more troops into France to stop the revolution. The National Assembly heard this rumour and the king was taken prisoner and beheaded by guillotine in 1793. Marie Antoinette was spared for just 9 months and then she too was put to death by the guillotine. Dr. Guillotine was a member of the National Assembly. He proposed that all death sentences in France be carried out by a machine. This machine of execution was supposed to be quick and painless. Before this, people were executed by an axeman. An Irishman, Hamilton Rowan, saw many people being put to death by the guillotine and he wrote, "About 60 people were guillotined in less than 1.5 hours. The blood of the victims streamed beneath my feet," which is not a very nice image at all, is it? During the French Revolution, thousands of nobles were killed. There was terrible cruelty during this time. The houses of nobles were burned down. Anyone thought to be against the revolution was put to death by guillotine. Over 20,000 nobles were killed in and around Paris. Up to 30,000 were killed in Lyon. The guillotine became the symbol of terror and fear in the new France. The slogan of the French Revolution spread to other countries with people demanding the same freedom. The people in Ireland were very interested in what happened in France. You will learn more about the French influence on Ireland in the next chapter, which we might be doing soon. It was a long time before France was at peace again, both within France and with other countries. However, the events from 1789 to 1795 changed its system of government for good. France was never again ruled by a king or a queen. The idea that all people are equal is still a very important part of the Constitution of France. So we have some vocabulary from this chapter. Bankrupt means to have no money to pay debts. A democracy is a system of government in which ordinary people choose their leaders. National Assembly is this organisation in France was made up by representatives of poor and middle class people. Pike is a spear used by soldiers before bayonets were introduced. Constitution, a set of beliefs or rules governing a country. The guillotine was a machine used for killing people, and it gets its name from a man called Dr. Guillotine. And a symbol is a sign, a letter, or a picture that represents or stands for something else. So on the worksheets, I have some questions for you there. Activity A. Activity B is a closed procedure. Activity C is more questions based on this little cartoon that you can see here. And then activity D is some creative writing. You can pick and choose what activities you'd like to do.